My daughter sent me a voice message. Get your stuff and clear out by Sunday, old man. My husband doesn't want you breathing his air anymore. I just laughed quietly in my workshop, knowing that by the time Sunday rolled around, they'd be the ones with nowhere to go. 3 weeks later, they were sleeping in their car in a Walmart parking lot, and I was on a porch in another state watching the sun come up over the Smoky Mountains. Before I get into how all this unfolded, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I read every single one. My name is Walter Hennessy. I'm 69 years old, and until 8 months ago, I lived in a 3-bedroom craftsman bungalow at 412 Beechwood Lane in Asheville, North Carolina. Spent 41 years as a structural engineer, the last 20 of those running my own firm, before I sold it to my 2 senior partners in 2019. Always thought I had a pretty good read on people. You don't survive 4 decades in construction without learning to spot a load-bearing lie from a cosmetic one. Turns out, the one person I couldn't read was sitting at my own kitchen table. The house on Beechwood was nothing fancy. Bought it back in 2003 for $238,000. Watched it climb to just under $590,000 by last spring. River rock fireplace, original oak floors, a wraparound porch where I used to drink coffee every morning and listen to the wood thrushes. I built a workshop out back the year my wife Eleanor passed, 2014. Spent 2 summers framing it myself. Hand-cut every rafter. That workshop saved my life, that first year of widowhood. When grief hollowed me out, I'd go out there and turn raw walnut into rocking chairs and cradle pieces. Patience, precision, and the right kind of pressure at the right time. That's what woodworking teaches you. That's also, as it turned out, how I'd eventually handle my own daughter. My daughter Marisa was 36 last year. Sweet kid growing up, the kind who'd save bees out of the swimming pool and cry over wilted flowers. She got her mother's laugh, the same crinkle around the eyes. After Eleanor died, Marisa and I leaned on each other hard. She was 25 then, working at a graphic design firm in Charlotte. We talked every Sunday for an hour. I drove down to see her once a month. For about 6 years, the 2 of us were a small but solid team. Then she met Brennan at some art fair in Greenville. Brennan Coyle, 39 now, the kind of man who introduces himself with a handshake too firm and eye contact that lasts a beat too long. He told me, the very first time we met, that he was an entrepreneur. I asked what kind. He said, all kinds. 40 years in business, and I've learned that all kinds usually means none yet. But Marisa was glowing, so I smiled and bought him a beer. They married 18 months later in a ceremony Brennan insisted on planning himself. He chose a vineyard outside Hendersonville, ran up a tab of about $34,000, and let me know 2 weeks before the date that he was a little short and could I help cover the venue. I covered it. I told myself it was a wedding gift. I told myself a lot of things back then. Marisa got pregnant about 8 months after the wedding. Lost the baby at 14 weeks. Real loss, the kind that breaks a person open. I drove down to Charlotte and stayed with them for 10 days. Brennan disappeared for most of it, said he had business meetings. I held my daughter while she cried, made her soup, sat with her in silence. When I left, Brennan walked me to the car and said, Walter, between you and me, the apartment's getting tight on us. The medical bills hit hard. Marisa's been talking about Asheville, about being closer to family, about maybe just for a little while. I drove home and made up the guest room. They moved in the following month. That was 4 years and 7 months ago. The first 6 months were fine. Marisa was healing. Brennan was supposedly building a consulting practice out of my dining room. He'd sit there in a polo shirt with a Bluetooth headset wedged in his ear, talking loud about deal flow and runway. I'd come down for breakfast, and he'd hold up a finger like I was interrupting a deposition. My own kitchen. By month 9, I started noticing that the consulting practice didn't seem to have any clients. Brennan had a lot of irons in the fire, as he liked to say. He never once put $1 into the household. Marisa got a remote job doing freelance design, pulling in maybe $42,000 a year. Brennan's income was, by his own accounting at tax time, $0. They drove a 2022 Lincoln Navigator I had co-signed for, payment of $811 a month. They ate out 4 nights a week. Brennan bought himself a Peloton, a $4,000 espresso machine, and a set of golf clubs that lived in my garage and never left it. Their lifestyle ran somewhere around $7,200 a month, against an income of roughly $3,500 net. The difference was me, and they both knew it, and after about year 2, neither of them bothered pretending otherwise. Brennan started in on the small stuff first. Comments at dinner about how I still wrote checks like it was $1,985, how my truck smelled like an old dog, how the workshop was kind of an eyesore from the kitchen window, no offense. Always with a little laugh after, like it was just teasing. Marisa would chuckle along, then catch my eye and look away. That's the part that hurt. Not Brennan. I never expected anything from him. But my daughter, the same girl who used to climb on my back so I could carry her to bed, learning to look away. By year 3, the comments had gotten sharper and Marisa had stopped looking away because she'd stopped noticing. Brennan would talk about me at the dinner table like I wasn't sitting 3 feet from him. Walter's slowing down. Walter shouldn't be on a ladder anymore. Walter should think about what happens if he falls in that workshop and nobody finds him for 2 days. Always wrapped in concern. Always with that performance of caring that I'd come to recognize as the language of people who are sizing up your estate. Last summer, Brennan started bringing up assisted living, casual at first. He'd left a brochure on the counter from a place called Beach Mountain Retirement Living. Just for reference, Walter, big print, easier to read. A few weeks later, he and Marisa sat me down in my own living room and explained that they'd been doing some research, that maybe it was time I considered right-sizing, that a place like Beach Mountain could give me a real community, structured meals, medical staff on hand, that the house was honestly too much for one man, and if I deeded it over to them, they'd take care of the property tax burden, and I'd be free to enjoy my golden years. I sat there listening, and for the first time in my life, I felt my hand twitch toward a slap. I didn't slap anyone. I never have. I just nodded and said I'd think about it. That night, in the workshop, I did some thinking. I thought about Eleanor. I thought about the night before she died, when she'd squeezed my hand and said, "Walter, don't ever let her marry a man who treats your house like a hotel." She had, of course, been talking about a boy Marisa had dated in her 20s. But the line stuck in my head like a splinter that night. Don't ever let her. About 6 months ago, something else happened. I joined a Saturday morning hiking group through the Asheville Parks Department. I was 68 and my knees were complaining, and my doctor said I needed to move more. The group met at a trailhead off the Blue Ridge Parkway. That's where I met Frances. Frances Whitlock, 65, retired middle school principal from Tennessee, widowed for 9 years. She had a head of silver hair she wore in a long braid, and a laugh that started in her belly. We hiked side by side that first Saturday and talked about everything and nothing. By the third Saturday, we were having coffee after. By the second month, I was driving down to Hendersonville on Friday nights to take her to dinner. I didn't hide Frances from Marisa and Brennan, but I didn't broadcast her either. The first time I mentioned her name at the dinner table, Marisa froze with a forkful of pasta halfway to her mouth. "You're seeing somebody?" Like I'd said I was joining ISIS. Brennan recovered first. "Good for you, Walter. Gotta keep busy at your age." Then he looked at Marisa, with one of those married couple looks that used to mean joy and now meant calculation. 2 months ago, I asked if I could have Frances over for Sunday dinner. Just dinner, the 4 of us. Get to know each other. Marisa said sure, Brennan said sure, and then Brennan apparently spent the next 48 hours working on Marisa, because by Saturday night, the dinner was off. Marisa came to the workshop door, wouldn't quite step inside, and told me she'd been thinking about it, and it didn't really feel right. Brennan and I just feel like, this is our space too, Dad, and bringing a stranger in feels really sudden. I asked her how long she'd known Brennan before she'd brought him to meet me. She blinked. She didn't have an answer. Then she said, "That was different. We were getting married." I said, "And how do you know I'm not?" She looked like I'd thrown ice water on her. She walked out without another word. I called Frances and explained. She said, "Walter, I think your daughter is afraid you're going to give your money to someone other than her." I sat with that one for a while. That night, around 9:30, I was out in the workshop sanding a curly maple bowl I'd been working on for a granddaughter I didn't have. My phone buzzed on the workbench. I picked it up. It was a voice message from Marisa. I tapped play, and her voice came through the little speaker, sharp and clipped, like she was reading from a script Brennan had handed her. "Dad, Brennan and I have talked about this, and we've made a decision. You need to get your stuff and clear out by Sunday. We can't keep doing this with you bringing strange women around and acting like you're 25. It's our home and our marriage, and we deserve peace. So just find a place. Old man, my husband doesn't want you breathing his air anymore. Sunday. I played it twice. The first time to make sure I'd heard it right. The second time to memorize the exact phrasing, because I knew I was going to need it. Then I laughed. Not loud, not hysterical. A small, dry laugh, the kind a man makes when something he's been bracing for finally lands. 40 years of engineering teaches you to recognize the moment when a load-bearing wall is about to give. You don't panic at that moment. You step back, you assess, and you figure out what's coming down with it and what isn't. I set the phone on the workbench, picked up my sanding block, and went back to the bowl. The wood was beautiful. Curly maple, that flame pattern that catches light from every angle. I worked on it for another 45 minutes, smoothing the rim, getting the curve just right. Around me, the shop smelled like sawdust and linseed oil. The crickets were going outside. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and went quiet. When I finally put the bowl down, I was perfectly clear about what I was going to do. Not angry, not even particularly sad anymore. Just clear. I went back to the house. The lights were off. Marisa and Brennan had gone to bed in the master suite, the one I'd given them 3 years ago when Marisa complained about the closet space in the guest room. I walked past their door to the smallest bedroom, the one I'd been sleeping in, and I opened my laptop. I logged into my secure cloud folder. 3 years ago, after the first time Brennan had floated the idea of estate planning together, I'd done something quiet. I'd called my old attorney, Doug Shelby, a man I'd worked with on commercial property contracts since the late 90s. Doug had updated my will, my living trust, my power of attorney. He'd made absolutely sure that the deed to 412 Beechwood Lane was clean and clear. Walter Hennessy, sole owner. Property taxes, sole payer. Utilities, sole payer. Homeowner's insurance, sole policyholder. Marisa was my beneficiary on most of it, but she had no current claim to anything while I was still breathing. Brennan had no claim ever. Doug had also drawn up the cosigner documents on the Lincoln Navigator with a specific clause I'd insisted on. I could withdraw my guarantee with 30 days written notice under material change in family relationship. Doug had raised an eyebrow when I asked for that clause. I'd said, "Belt and suspenders, Doug." He'd nodded and put it in. I spent about an hour reviewing everything. By the time I closed the laptop, I had a list. 8 items, 8 moves. I was going to make them in a specific order over a specific span of days. And when I was done, I was going to disappear from Beechwood Lane, the way water disappears from a glass when you tip it. Slowly, completely, leaving nothing behind. The next morning at 6:15, I made coffee. Brennan came down at 7, 40 inches his boxers and a Tar Heels shirt. He stopped when he saw me. "Hey, Walter, about Marisa's message last night. We probably should have talked about that in person. Didn't mean to upset you." I smiled at him over my mug. "Not upset. I appreciate the clarity." He blinked. He didn't know what to do with that. He'd been expecting tears or a fight, something he could leverage. He got a smile and a nod, and it threw him off balance. He poured himself coffee from my pot in my kitchen, and he said, "So, you're cool? You're going to find a place?" "I'm working on it," I said. That afternoon I drove to Doug Shelby's office. Doug was 71 now, semi-retired, but he still kept hours 3 days a week in a converted Victorian downtown. He met me in his back office, the one with the view of the maple tree he'd been telling me about since 2001. I told him the situation. I let him hear the voice message. He listened to the whole thing, then leaned back in his chair and said, "Walter, what do you want?" "I want them out of my house. I want to sell the house. I want my name off that car loan. I want to not be in Asheville anymore. And I want all of it to happen so fast they don't have time to react until it's already done." Doug nodded slowly. "We can do all of that. The eviction's the slowest piece. North Carolina, no written lease. You're looking at a 10-day notice to quit. Then if they don't go, summary ejectment in magistrate court. Could be 3 to 4 weeks total. Everything else moves faster." "Start the clock today," I said. "Notice to quit, certified mail, hand-delivered backup. I want them served by tomorrow noon." "Done. End the car. Withdraw the cosign." "How fast?" 5 business days for the lender to process and notify. Then they have to either find a new cosigner, refinance solo, pay it off, or surrender the vehicle. "Surrender the vehicle is what's going to happen," I said. He's got no income on paper. She doesn't make enough. Doug made a note. What else? I want the house listed. Cash buyers preferred. Quick close. I'll take a haircut on price for speed. I know an agent. She moves fast. She'll have it on the market in 72 hours. I drove home as the sun was setting over the Pisgah Ridge. The sky was that deep October orange. I felt lighter than I'd felt in 5 years. Not happy exactly. Lighter. The certified letter arrived the next day at 11:47 a.m. I was at Frances's house, drinking tea and helping her repot a Christmas cactus. My phone started buzzing at 11:58. By the time I looked at it, I had 9 missed calls from Marisa and 4 from Brennan. I let it ring. Frances looked at me over her glasses and said, "You doing all right, Walter?" I said, "I'm doing better than all right. I'm finally doing the right thing." That evening, I picked up the phone when Marisa called for the 11th time. Her voice was already raw. "Dad, what is this? What is this letter?" "It's exactly what it looks like, sweetheart. Notice to vacate. You have 10 days. Dad, you can't just... I sent that voice message. I was upset. I didn't mean clear out, clear out. I meant we needed space. You know I didn't. I think you meant exactly what you said, and I'm responding to it." Brennan is freaking out. He says we have rights. We've lived here 4 years. We have tenant rights. You can absolutely talk to a lawyer about that. I've talked to mine. He's not concerned. There's no lease. You've never paid rent. You're guests, and I'm withdrawing the invitation. Florida and North Carolina handle this almost identically, sweetheart. It's a clean process. Dad, please, where are we supposed to go? You make about $42,000 a year. Brennan makes nothing. There are apartments in West Asheville for $1,300 a month. You can afford one of those if Brennan stops pretending he's a consultant and goes and gets a job. I hear UPS is hiring. Brennan got on the phone. Walter, listen to me. This is overreach. You're overreaching. We can sit down and have a conversation like adults. We had 4 years to have conversations like adults, Brennan. You spent them telling me my truck smelled like a dog. The conversation portion of our relationship is over. The legal portion is just beginning. Have a good night. I hung up. The next 8 days were a slow-motion freight train. The real estate agent Doug had recommended, a sharp woman named Camille Boudreau, came out the day after the notice was served. She walked the house with me, ignoring Marisa and Brennan, who were huddled in the master suite with the door closed, pretending we weren't there. Camille listed it that Friday at $584,000. By Sunday, she had 3 offers. By Tuesday, I'd accepted one for $578,000 cash from a couple relocating from Atlanta, a pediatric oncologist and his husband, who wanted to close in 21 days. Wednesday morning, the lender called Brennan. I know this because I could hear him yelling in the master suite from 2 rooms away. The navigator was being called due. $46,000 in change in remaining balance, plus penalties, plus interest. Pay in full, find a cosigner who could qualify, refinance solo, or surrender the vehicle. He had 14 days. That afternoon, I started loading my truck. Boxes of clothes, my tools, my woodworking books, Eleanor's old sewing machine that I'd kept all these years even though I couldn't sew a button. I made trip after trip out to a storage unit I'd rented in West Asheville. Marisa came out to the driveway on the 3rd trip. Her eyes were swollen. Dad, you're really doing this? I'm really doing this. The car. They called Brennan about the car. I'm aware. Dad, he's going to lose the car. We can't get to anything without the car. He never paid $1 on that car, sweetheart. I paid the down payment. I co-signed the note. He drove it like he owned it. He didn't. Now he doesn't drive it at all. There's bus service in Asheville. You're being cruel. I set the box I was carrying down on the tailgate of my truck. I turned and looked at her, really looked, for the first time in a long time. My daughter, the girl who used to bring me dandelions she thought were roses. Standing in my driveway, calling me cruel because I wouldn't keep paying for the car her husband used to drive to the country club for golf lessons he billed to my credit card. Marisa, listen to me carefully. I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. And I am done, today, right now, being your wallet. If that's cruelty to you, then your definition of cruelty has gotten very strange and very convenient. Cruelty is what you said in that voice message. What I'm doing is just consequence. She started crying. I didn't move toward her. 6 months ago, A year ago, I would have. I would have hugged her and felt my resolve dissolve. That night, I would have called Doug and said, "Slow it down, give them another month." But I'd done that move so many times over the last 4 years that it had worn a groove in me. I wasn't going to step in that groove again. I picked the box back up and put it in the truck. 11 days after the notice, 2 days before the eviction hearing was scheduled, Brennan came at me in the kitchen. He'd been drinking. He's not a large man, but he's a loud one, and he stood about a foot from my face and started in on me. How I was an old man, how I was a coward, how Eleanor would be ashamed of me, how he was going to make sure I never saw Marisa again. I let him talk. When he was done, I said, "Brennan, I want you to look out the kitchen window." He looked. Camille's contractor was out there putting the sold sign over the for sale sign. "That sold yesterday," I said. "Closes in 19 days. The new owners take possession the day after. You will be out by then, or the sheriff will help you out. I'm not going to threaten you. I'm not going to fight you. I'm just going to let the calendar do its work. Now please get out of my kitchen." He stared at me for a long second, and I saw something in his eyes that surprised me. Fear. Real, plain fear. Underneath all that swagger, this was a man who had no income, no assets, no plan, and a sugar daddy who had just turned off the tap. He turned around and walked out of the kitchen. He left the house 20 minutes later with the keys to the Lincoln. I watched him drive away, and I knew he was driving it to a buddy's house to try to hide it from the repossession agent. It wouldn't work. The repo company had a tracker order on the VIN. They picked it up out of his friend's driveway 4 days later at 3 a.m. The eviction hearing was actually never held, because Marisa and Brennan moved out the night before. They left the house in rough shape. Holes punched in 2 walls of the master bedroom, that was Brennan. A long key scratched down the hood of my truck. That was also Brennan, I assume. A handwritten note on the kitchen island in Marisa's looping cursive. "I hope you're proud of yourself." I had the holes patched and the truck repainted. The closing went through 12 days later. I walked out of Camille's office with a check for $491,000 in change after the mortgage payoff and the closing costs and the agent's commission. I deposited it that afternoon. I didn't move to Florida like the man in the story you've probably already heard. I went the other direction. I bought a small log cabin on 3 wooded acres outside Sevierville, Tennessee, on the Tennessee side of the Smokies, for $329,000 cash. 2 bedrooms, a screen porch facing east, a creek running along the back of the property loud enough to put you to sleep. There was a detached garage I converted into a new workshop in about 6 weeks. I drove Frances up to see it the second weekend. She walked the property in her hiking boots, came back to the porch, sat down next to me and said, "Walter, I could be very happy here." I said, "That's the idea." She moved her things up 6 weeks after that. We're not married, we're not in any hurry. We make breakfast together most mornings and go to bed together most nights, and we are, both of us, more peaceful than we've been in a long time. I heard from Marisa about 3 months after I left Asheville. A text. "Brennan and I separated. I'm staying with a friend in Charlotte. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know." I read it. I waited a day. I wrote back, "I'm glad you're safe. I hope you're taking care of yourself." I didn't ask any other questions. I didn't offer anything. She wrote back, "Thank you, Dad." A month after that, another text. I got a job at a marketing agency, full-time, benefits. First time in 5 years. "That's good news," I wrote back. A month after that, Brennan got arrested. Wire fraud. Some scheme he was running through one of his shell companies. I had no idea. The FBI took my laptop. I sat with that one a while. Then I wrote, "I'm sorry you're going through that. Are you safe?" "Yes." I had nothing to do with it. They confirmed that already. Good. She wrote one more thing that day. "Dad, I'm in therapy, twice a week. I'm working on understanding how I let myself become someone I didn't recognize. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know I'm trying. I know I have a lot to make up for. I know it might take years. I know it might be too late. I'm trying anyway." I read that text out on the porch with Frances. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, "Marisa, I love you. Keep doing the work. We can talk again someday. Not today, but someday. I'm proud of you for starting." She wrote, "Thank you, Dad. I'll wait." That was 4 months ago. We've exchanged a few short messages since. Birthdays. Thanksgiving. Nothing heavy. I don't know yet if there's a road back to a real relationship between us. Maybe there is. Maybe in a year or two we'll meet for coffee somewhere neutral and start over slow. Maybe she'll keep doing the work and become someone I want to know again. Maybe she won't. Either way is okay with me now, and that's the thing I want anyone watching this to really hear. The day my daughter sent me that voice message telling me to clear out, I thought my heart was going to break. It didn't break. It just finally stopped trying to hold up a building that had been condemned for years. There's a peace that comes from setting down a weight you didn't even know you were carrying. There's a freedom in finally believing, at 69, that you are allowed to choose yourself. I want to leave you with 3 things I learned the hard way, in case you're sitting somewhere watching this and recognizing pieces of your own life. First, get your paperwork in order before you think you need to. Deeds, wills, trusts, co-signer clauses. The time to write a contract is when everyone's still smiling. Second, you can love someone and still refuse to be used by them. Those 2 things are not in conflict. They are, in fact, the same act. Third, and this is the big one, when somebody shows you who they are not auditioning, they are not having a bad day, they are not going through a phase. They are introducing themselves. Believe them the first time, and act accordingly. My workshop in Tennessee is finished now. I'm working on a cradle. It's not for any baby in particular. I just like building cradles. The wood is curly maple, same as the bowl I was sanding the night I got the message. Francis brings me coffee in the afternoon and we sit on the porch and watch the light change on the mountains. If this story meant something to you, do me the favor of liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Drop a comment and tell me your story, or just tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I read them all. The next story is in the box on the left if you want to keep going. Either way, thank you for sitting with me a while. Take care of yourself out there, and don't ever apologize for choosing your own peace.